this week's episode of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. Grab a seat at the table as Masters rowing coaches Marlene Royal and Rebecca Caro share their biggest secrets on how to unleash your hidden potential and plot a new course for real results on the water and off. Now, on to the show.
Well, hello everybody and welcome to another edition of Faster Masters Rowing Radio. I'm Rebecca Caro and today we've got a really interesting topic. It's mindset. What is mindset? It's the ability to train and maintain your focus over the long term. At the end of the session, we've got a wonderful self-test questionnaire which you can use to learn how well you are personally performing at the moment. And of course, the thing about long-term longevity, health span as opposed to lifespan, and rowing for life, which is one of the themes that Faster Masters Rowing always promotes. We really want to give you the tools and techniques that you need in order to use these things to make your life, your rowing life, the way that you want it to be. Now, today, to talk around all of these topics with me is the wonderful Jack Burns, all the way from Bonnie, Scotland. Hello, Jack.
Hey, Rebecca. Thanks for having me on.
So, love the accent. Always have loved the Scottish accent. Jack is a former international rower who now has a new life and career running a business called Edge Rowing. So, tell us a little bit about your backstory and what led you to what you're doing now.
So, it all started around kind of the age of 19. I'd always had a passion for sports and trying to find a way to make a living at it. I used to play ice hockey and I was never going to be nearly good enough at it to make it to the NHL. So saw Helen Glover competing at the Olympics and saw that she went from beginner to Olympic gold medalist in 4 years, and that inspired me to go and try it. And sure enough, picked it up and enjoyed it. But my journey was always where I found the most enjoyment from it was through the process and through the kind of seeing what I can do, where I can go with it, rather than kind of the external competitions and winning. Don't get me wrong, I love doing, but I just really enjoyed seeing what I was really capable of. From there, lots of up and downs, struggled with injury. The big one was struggling with mindset. Terrible mindset for a long time. And as a result, my results were bad. They were miles off of where I wanted to be. And then slowly but surely, through trial and error, worked with a couple of coaches as well, found out the kind of systems and the tactics that you can use in the same way you would go about training your technique on the catch or, your strength in the gym. Started to develop kind of an idea and an understanding of how you can improve your mindset in a sort of systemized way. And yeah, that got me from where I was a very low to, racing internationally and winning or won trials once as well. I didn't, obviously I'm retired now. I'm not going to go to the Olympics, but I got close to that really high end of the sport.
That is an amazing story. Now, tell me a little bit, what is mindset? Is this sports psychology by another name?
Yeah, so that's actually, I've never actually been asked it in that way. So mindset, performance mindset, for me, that's all about your ability to handle external factors, your ability to push yourself to the limit, and your ability to visualize the changes that you want to happen in on the rowing machine or with your technique. For me as well, it's something I'm super passionate about because I was always trying to spot where the common factors were between the successful rowers. And in a few months' time in Paris, go and look at all the crews in the A final, and you'll have the Italians rating 24 and all of their training, nothing lower. The Brits doing weights and UT2 all the time. The Americans seat racing all the time. Totally different techniques and training programs. But what the most common factor is their mindset and what they're thinking about. Okay, to go back to your question on mindset, like it's where is your attention going? How are you able to handle the distractions and the nerves and the competitors and all the other noise that's going on around you? And how can you dial in your focus into what really matters and to what is going to really make the difference for you in a race? And certainly through my career and through the athletes that we work with, we found that's the most powerful thing you can focus on. And it's also, for me, I'm super passionate about it, because when you approach it in that way, you can take it into other areas of life. You can take it into, your career or personal life or education, whatever it is. Personally, I know now I'm like a rowing coach, so it's not that different from rowing, but the business side of it, I have noticed, a huge transition, huge benefit from what I learned through doing rowing mindset, transferring into the work I do now. And I think it's so cool to help athletes go on that same journey and realize the transformations that they can undergo.
Brilliant. We'll come back to mindset a little bit later on in our chat, but let's go back to your business. You run a business called Edge Rowing. Great choice of name. Edge of what?
It's all about getting the edge.
Oh, getting.
Yes. Yeah. So, it's funny you mentioned that as well. I like these questions because I haven't actually talked about them in a long time. But when I got started, I wrote down a list of everything that I wanted to focus on. And for me from the beginning, and us now as a team, it's always been about bringing that elite performance sport to anybody basically that wants it. And whether someone has 30 minutes to train in the day 3 times a week, or whether they have 60 to 90 minutes that they can train 5, 6, maybe 7 times a week, making that training window that they have as maximized as possible, providing all this sort of resources and educations that are available for them, so that they can really just make sure that they're reaching their fullest potential. So part of getting that edge is not just looking at mindset, but it's looking at everything around technique, recovery, training zones, physiology testings, and beyond. So just getting carried away, that for me, like on my journey, that was what it was all about. Is I wanted to put myself in a position when I stopped that I could say I did absolutely everything I could to reach my fullest potential. And that's the part of the process that I just enjoy the most, and that really works for us and working with our athletes to this day.
That is so interesting. You used a phrase then, which is that I wanted to be able to say that I'd done everything I could. Roll back my personal story. I didn't do particularly well in my final exams, A-levels at school, and I then decided I wanted to go to a university, and I had to retake my A-levels, and I had to do an entrance exam to the university I wanted to go to. And so it's September, and your retakes are usually in the middle of December.
Okay.
And then you might stand a chance of getting into clearing, and then getting accepted for the following year's academic year. And age 19, I remember sitting down with myself. No one else told this to me. I worked it out for myself, which was that by Christmas, I wanted to be able to put my hand on my heart and to say that I couldn't have done any more in terms of my quality of study and revision and application to the task of retaking my exams and doing this entrance examination. And then the outcome would be what it would be. If I was not good enough, I was not good enough.
Mm-hmm.
But I seriously thought I was good enough, but then I wanted to hold myself to account. And I slowly worked this out in a single sitting, and from it came an enormous amount of benefit from the whole of the rest of my life. Roll us back to your earliest days and tell us a story about your first encounter with realizing that mindset was going to be important for Jack and for Jack's goals.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, and like love that story as well. And I think that's maybe just already touching on some of the transferable skills that the vehicle of rowing can give you, that very clear, defined goal. And yeah, you're talking about it in an educational standpoint as well, which I think is it's so interesting to see the relatability. But yeah, for me, going back to when was the first time? So I mean, I started off rowing an incredibly keen being, like pretty much jumped into a full-time training program as soon as I was doing kind of 10 sessions a week as a student, pretty much from day one, pulling as hard as I could every single session. But I had showed progress because of my application of like my will, basically, that I was progressing quite well, quite early. And, you know, I was on a good trajectory that if I kept going at that rate in a couple of years, I would be able to do GB under 23s, and then, you know, kept going at that same rate, likely to be in for a shot for the GB team. Unfortunately, unsurprisingly, a novice doing 18K, 20K, 24K a day, pulling as hard as possible on the rowing machine, got injured pretty quickly. And when I got injured, I still had that idea of my trajectory, and I was like, yep, cool. If I can sort my back out, as soon as I get back, I'll be laughing. 18 months later, very difficult recovery with my back, but eventually came back, and I'd forgotten what got me there in the first place. So
you went right back to what you were doing before because you wanted to pull hard.
Well, that actually, I left rowing with my so I got injured with a good mindset and a good trajectory. When I came back to rowing, I still thought I had the good trajectory, but I had a bad mindset. And, you know, I just thought I had it in the bag. I was lying to myself about my performances and what what the reality of the situation was. And sure enough, you know, one of my first trials back after my injury, I was about 2 minutes off. I've still got the photo saved of the results. You can go and look it up, the 2015 February trials on the GB rowing site. You'll see me right at the bottom of the list, 2 minutes off of where I needed to be. And that was just, my heart sunk when I saw that result. I just couldn't believe it. But still, you know, even for a year or two, it not really address the issue. Thinking maybe I just need to keep going for a bit longer or work on my technique a little bit. The kind of easy sort of like solutions that people like to look to. But it wasn't until I kind of started working with another coach that he sorted me out, Richard Walsh, kind of old school guy, but we approached training in a way that really had me question my motivation to get in the sport. I remember when I first started with him, and he picked up on my BS pretty quickly, and he was just like, Jack, you said you want to go to the Olympics, and right now this is the training that you're doing, and you're not doing it correctly. That's fine. We just need to reassess your goals because you're not going in the right direction with it. And just the sort of way he phrased it, where he made it clear that it was my decision that I was training in that way, and that it had to be ultimately me that wanted it the most. That just sort of ignited a change and really made me question where are my weaknesses in my training, and you know, started to push harder in training when it came to the right sessions. And because when I came back, I wasn't pushing myself at all. Leaving a lot of speed on the table, training so inconsistently, so being like so bad at like keeping my focus where it needed to be. And yeah, that was just the sort of the start of the change to go in the right direction. But still, like, look, I did a lot of it on my own, and a lot of years of trial and error. And, you know, when we're coaching for us now, it's like, how can we help rowers make the same transformation that I made in a fraction of the time?
Yeah, let's shortcut the
Yeah.
process. Let's not leave it up to you and to hope that Richard Walsh is there to help you at the right moment when you need it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that brings us around to edge rowing. There are lots of online coaching programs, and Zoomurgs is something that Mark Davies of British Rowing started, and lots of people loved it. But you've set up edge rowing as something that has a very different slant. Talk us through the key things that anyone who might want to explore working with you, what they'll find.
Yeah. So, our approach, and again, this is not to say that this isn't other people's approach, but for us, it's about being athlete obsessed and just, thinking about how can we deliver the best service possible for people that want to take their rowing to the next level and row to the best versions of themselves. So, we just get obsessed with giving them every single edge that there is. All of our programming is like 100% custom. So we'll build every program from the ground up. So everybody's schedule is different. We'll work around that. People's situations, maybe they have a crew boat on Saturday that they like to go out with. Maybe they do CrossFit or something like that once a week, or they like to go for a bike ride once a week, or whatever it is. We'll work that in and give them a program that's built around them. My background from university was mathematics, so I've gotten quite into the data analysis side of it. So one thing that we're doing now is tracking data on an individual basis and actually using it. So many programs, even in the GB team, we tracked loads of data. We never did anything with it. Nothing changed. So for us, we're working on figuring out where is someone's performance indicators in training, like when are they performing well? And then we work back from there using the data to figure out what got them there. So the two big things with data for us is, when are you performing well in training? And then what was the training that you did that got you there? And then we use that information moving forward and just continue to get dialed in on what the best program for someone is. On top of that, we just get carried away sometimes with thinking about areas we can improve on. We've got Justin Best and Cara Cowler, two people who are going to the US Olympics, that are in our WhatsApp group chat, sharing part of their journey. Last year, we had Ollie Zeidler in our group chat, just constantly thinking about our mindset in the coaching team is, how can we have edge rowing as, so good that if at some point someone wanted to go to the Olympics, they would question if they should go to their national governing body or they should go and work with us. So it's a pretty aspirational goal, but we do have one person right now in Australia that's shooting for the Olympics, and they literally just pulled a 6:27. Like she pulled a 6:27, which is, I think it's in the top 5. That being said, we've got people on the very sharp end of the sport. We don't give a shit about people's performance level. Like, what is important for us is what's their attitude, what is their how are they with bringing on new concepts? Are they motivated to work with a coach closely one-to-one? And we've got people that are breaking 9 minutes 30 for the first time on the 2K. We've got people like getting close to world records. Yeah, I don't know. Is that's quite a lot of information already there. I could keep going.
I think the athlete-centered approach is something that it's very hard to prove until someone experiences it. And I was fascinated by what you said about British Rowing and not using the data, because they were sponsored by the SAS Institute and made a big deal about their data-led approach.
Yeah, it's a bunch. Yeah, they track it, but they just copy and paste the program from the previous Olympiad. And don't get me wrong, it still works. It's still a program that they're going to go on and get some medals at the World Champs, but it could be better. And I guess in a group program, that's where a part of where we're different is, if you're coaching a group of 30 people and they go out in the 8, like, you can't really have them on different programs. So that's for, where for us, like, that's partially why we're pretty limited on how many people we can work with, is because we do it very like one-to-one. So, Yeah, I mean, like for example, like when some of the things we try and do differently. I remember when I was in the GB team, if you get injured on a Saturday afternoon, and fair enough, the physio has time off, you know, you're not going to get seen until Monday morning. One thing we did that we were pretty proud of, someone got injured Saturday morning, they contacted us by midday, and we have an online physio they got seen to by the afternoon. So that was the one point I was like, we're doing something better than the GB rowing team. So that was really exciting for me, and we're just constantly trying to think, how can we provide that elite level support for somebody who's got a full-time job, who's a master's, and maybe they don't want to train 18 times a week, but they want to train 4 to 6 times a week, and they want to see where they can really go with the limited amount of training time that they have.
George Bridgewater was on the rowing New Zealand team twice, and the first time he was, you know, part of a general, as you said, a group of 30 athletes all doing the same thing. When I interviewed him on this podcast, one of the things he said was what had changed I think he took an entire Olympiad off and then came back. And he said one of the things that had changed was that they were using the training data, particularly for individualized erg sessions. Now, Rowing New Zealand are not particularly known for doing a lot of erg sessions, but he said that he was doing something that was very different from some of the guys and girls alongside him at that point. Now, obviously, that was a few years ago, and I know that rowing data has moved on since then. But it is definitely clear to me that athletes can be completely bonkers, and you know, the more is better approach tends to be a natural athlete response. Is if you hit a setback, you tend to try to work harder.
Mm-hmm.
From the masters, our ability to recover really does mean that we cannot do 12 sessions a week with adequate recovery in between, regardless of how good a mindset you have.
Yeah,
it's about physiology and balance. And so I really like hearing what you're saying about that individualization, because if you are a long-term athlete like myself, I've been rowing for years, I keep an endurance base regardless. I don't need to be doing lots and lots of UT2 90, 60-minute sessions because my base fitness has been worked on for years. But I absolutely do need an awful lot of all of the other stuff. And I think that that's something that I have learned quite recently, how very, very different each decade can be as you age through the sport of rowing.
Yeah. And for us, you know, that's where we can figure out what is going to be the best for someone in their training. Like, what sort of training do they respond best to? So we use data, we use our experience as athletes, and we also use our coach's gut, our coach's intuition to get dialed in on what's going to make the biggest difference. And I like that you're talking about recovery, because I think that's the most overlooked area of rowing performance. And rowing is still very is still very, I'd say 10, 20 years behind all other endurance sports. If you look at,
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pulling that number out of the air, but I mean, in terms of like, you know, looking at science and sequencing training load and planning recovery, I think really like rowing is just more is more. Every year, you know, people are afraid to have a recovery week. People are afraid to take off seasons. It's still viewed as, you know, a weakness. You look at sports like cycling, you look at the way that they build throughout a season. And, you know, they're spending the first 3 months of the year just at a very low volume for a sport that is a very high volume requirement. In building, I just think that rowing is just a bit, it doesn't like to move on as quickly as other sports. I think partially that's because they don't have as much investment, because there's not that many spectators in the sport. So there's less financial incentive to find out like what's actually the best training program. And it just kind of goes back to, well, it worked for Steve Redgrave in the 90s, or it worked for me at college when we won the nationals in 1990 or whatever. And I think it's a fear thing as well. I think coaches are afraid to make a change because if they keep things the way they've always been, and that program has had success, and a new athlete comes in and they don't get success in that program, it's the athlete's fault and not the coach's fault. Whereas if you're a coach and you try something new, and it fails, then far more like so much more of that blame goes on the coach, which I think comes down to an insecurity from the coaching perspective. Which, not to say I'm not insecure, I definitely do have my insecurities, but I think a lot it comes down to fear as well.
Now, I'm delighted to announce to everyone listening today that Jack is going to do a rowing mindset webinar with Faster Masters Rowing. Mark your diaries. It's going to be on April the 23rd, and we will be announcing details of exactly what he's going to be teaching and its applicability to everybody who is listening today. If you're on the Faster Masters Rowing newsletter list, you will get an early bird discount, and everybody else, I will announce it more publicly later on. But sign up, fastermastersrowing.com/newsletter, and we very much look forward to hanging out and diving into the how of this mindset that, Jack, you have very generously opened up a lot of detail, and I know that lots of people are going to be having questions that they want answered. Some of the live listeners are definitely enjoying hearing what you've got to say today.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really excited for it. And the big thing for me is going to be making sure that people are leaving that with simple, clear, actionable steps that they can go away and use to improve their rowing mindset, regardless of what it is. You don't even necessarily have to feel that you have a quote problem with your mindset. It can already be good. It can always be better. So that's going to be in the same way, rather than just saying be tougher or be more focused. That's the outcome for us. It's going to be about, how can you find the process that you need to focus on within your mindset, so that you can go away in your next session, have a direction on how to get it better.
Now, right at the beginning, we promised a self-assessment tool. It's on the screen now. It's edgerowing.com/scorecard. Jack, tell us a bit about it.
So, yeah, again, partially me just getting carried away with trying to add things. So a big thing is for us is we're very limited on how many people we can work with. So a lot of what we do is giving out free content so that we can put good rowing information out there. This is probably one of our best things that we've put out. It's a free, simple scorecard that takes about 2 minutes. You go through, answer a series of about 30 yes or no questions. That's basically just quizzing you on your rowing situation. You get a mark back. You'll get an idea of if you're rowing to the best version of yourself and if there's area for improvement within your training. As part of that score as well, you'll get a custom feedback report that'll give you breakdowns on how you can go away and actually improve some areas of your rowing training. And it'll give you some resources and some tools so that you can, just take one more step to that sort of next level within your rowing. Go away, try it out, come back in 6 weeks, assess yourself, what gets measured gets improved. So it's pretty cool free resource we've got that anybody can go away and use.
Well, thank you very much for telling us about that, which I am definitely going to go and invest a little time in assessing myself. Jack from Edge Rowing, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for the insight. And I think I have heard it said, my father-in-law, who was a rowing coach, said that racing is 90% between the ears. It's all in the brain. It's not all in the brain, but an awful lot of successful outcomes can definitely be trained, and they definitely are things that people can learn how to do. And that's the key, I think, to masters rowing successfully, is to set everything up the way it's going to suit you and your personality and your goals, which, as you rightly said, can change from year to year. So you're going to be really adding to the sum of toolkit elements that anyone who is on the Faster Masters Rowing program, who's on our newsletter list, who's listening to us now, everyone can benefit from what you're going to be teaching. So April 23rd, I will be sending details out to everyone who's on the newsletter list with a early bird discount. And we very much look forward to hanging out together again later on this month.
Yeah. Very excited to see everybody there and to play a small part in people's rowing journey. So yeah, can't wait.
This has been Faster Masters Rowing. So till next time, goodbye.
We are part of the Rowing Chat Podcast Network. Please tell your rowing friends about the show. And if you've learned just one helpful thing from today's episode, please consider supporting the show for as little as $1 per month by visiting fastermastersrowing.com/podcast.